I, but also from Yorkshire, like you said, that a week is a long time in politics. Well, 6 days is certainly a long time in tech, isn't it?
It can feel like a long time, but let's be honest. You use spring and summer. Well, the seeds of this summer were being sown last winter. OpenAI isn't new. We're at Chat GPT 3, not 1, and we'll soon have Chat GPT 4. Google has been building its equivalent for a long time, years actually. So what we're seeing this week is the flowers, the buds are coming out, and ChatGPT and other AI platforms clearly have reached a point of no return. They're part of the ecosystem now. We're going to have to learn to live with them, learn what they're good for, learn what they're not good for.
I know on Monday of next week, you're doing a debate with Gary Marcus, who's also been on the show several times, one of the world's leading experts on AI, about whether or not all this AI is good for the world. You, as always, are optimistic and positive. Gary's more suspicious. What are you going to argue on Monday?
Well, it's a traditional debate, and the question is, will AI, and specifically ChatGPT, do more harm or more good for the world? And so we'll be arguing about that. And I think Gary is definitely very focused on the harm it can do in two dimensions. One is teaching the world that the definition of AI is a chatbot, which it clearly isn't. So he wants to make clear that this isn't AI and define what it is. And then the second dimension is it's wrong a lot, but sounds confident enough that you might think it's right. So it can also poison the knowledge base. So he's concerned about both. I'll be talking about the other side, which is that it was able to pass the Amazon software engineer exam this week. It was able to pass the Wharton MBA law exam this week.
Right. Yeah, so that's really what it seems to me, Keith, that obviously the technology hasn't changed in the last couple of weeks. What's changed over the last couple of weeks is most people acknowledge that this thing is for real. At first, it had a lot of promise, but we've had promising technologies in the past that have proved to be duds, everything from crypto to the virtual reality that Mark Zuckerberg is peddling at Meta. Is what's happened over the last 2 weeks generally a consensus? As you say in the news of the week this week, you link to stories about ChatGPT passing a Wharton MBA exam, which actually isn't surprising. I mean, Trump claims to have gone to Wharton, so if he can pass, ChatGPT certainly should be able to. And also passing the Amazon software interview questions. Is that really what's happened?
Well, what people are discovering is that ChatGPT is excellent if you ask it the right things.
Sounds like me, doesn't it, Keith?
It sounds like all of us, actually, Andrew. Not only you. But if you ask it the right things and use it in the way that it's good at, it's super good. And that list of things it's good at includes lots and lots of very valuable and useful things. Now, you could also show all the things it's bad at and draw the conclusion, therefore it's bad. Both conclusions are wrong. It isn't good. It isn't bad. It's good.
Well, we've heard the bad. With all due respect, Keith, we've heard that many times before. Oh, technology isn't good or isn't bad. It depends whose hands it in. Whose hands is ChatGPT in? I just got an interesting piece about the new king of the valley, OpenAI's Sam Altman. Is he the new it man in Silicon Valley?
Well, look, he's super important because he's persevered. Well, firstly, he decided to spend his time on this.
You discovered him, didn't you, Keith? We did a show about him about 2 years ago.
We said he was super smart at that time.
We didn't. You did. I didn't say anything about him.
I did, and he is super smart. And more to the point, for a guy who didn't need to do anything because he's made money, he chose to spend time in this space, and he's now built and shipped staggeringly good products out of it that have changed the perception of all of us about what computers can and can't do, and how humans can or can't leverage them. So I think he's a special guy.
He didn't come from anywhere. He didn't come from nowhere. I mean, he was a successful entrepreneur and investor. So again, Keith, I've asked you this question before, but it's always worth asking again. For non-techies, what exactly is ChatGPT?
ChatGPT it's an interface to a machine learning natural language engine. And what does that mean? It means it can talk to you as if it's a human in sentences, and it can answer your questions as if it was a human, and it can draw on a vast body of knowledge called a large language model in order to educate itself as to what to use in answering your questions. You could think of it as a massive database with the ability to speak to you and look up things in that database in real time to aid its conversation. And you can question it. It remembers what it said to you in a conversation, so you can ask it to drill down into a specific part and tell me more about that. So it's extremely friendly to a human being because you could talk to it as if it is a professor or.
Keith, the reason we're doing this show early is because you're lucky enough to be going to a Bruce Springsteen concert in Texas tomorrow. What ChatGPT is very good at is borrowing the style of Bruce Springsteen, for example, to write new lyrics. It did it with Nick Cave, a song a few weeks ago. Nick Cave was very dismissive, saying that the quality of what it produced was third or fourth rate. I would guess that Springsteen would say the same thing. What I don't understand, though, is at what point, once this software begins to replicate the work of a Springsteen or a Cave or other artists, that they will sue it, because they do not own ChatGPT and OpenAI and Sam Altman do not own the style rights to Bruce Springsteen. So at what point, like with Napster, does this become a huge legal problem, particularly in terms of IP?
Yeah. I think the word style, if you interpret it in the way that you just used it, which is a way of forming a song, there's no copyright on style. You could say that the Beatles copied the style of Elvis Presley. And they did. They copied a lot of things from Elvis Presley, but they also copied other things from Jerry Lee Lewis and so on. So think of the whole history of bands that you've liked. And how
right, and the best ones, of course, acknowledge it. I mean, Dylan more than anyone else, or the Rolling Stones, both acknowledge their debt to the blues and to American music generally.
Pete Seeger in Dylan's case. I don't think style.
But will we see? Do you think a whole wave of legal cases against OpenAI? Will the Nick Caves and the Springsteens of the world, who tend to be, at least their lawyers tend to be very reactive, very sensitive to intellectual theft, are they going to respond to this new technology? I mean, no one's really had time to even think it through yet.
Well, Getty Images did sue this week one of the AI image platforms, Stable Diffusion, I think it's called, that leveraged Getty Images' image base as part of its learning experience. So I think there will be lawsuits, but it won't be to do with new works derived from old works. You can't stop a computer reading Bruce Springsteen's prior songs because they're on the public record. So just like you and me can read them, and you and me can go and write a new song where we're trying very hard to be like Bruce Springsteen, but it's a new song.
I wonder, Keith, whether you're going to hear from Queen's lawyers. Your headline this week is AI can't be stopped. Of course, Queen did Don't Stop Me Now. Others have done songs like You Can't Stop Me Now. Have you been doing a little bit of intellectual theft this week, Keith?
You know, I am not an original thinker, Andrew. I'm a curator. Of course, I have to make some decisions about what to curate, and then when I write,
you're a typical Yorkshireman like Harold Wilson.
Yep, exactly.
What did Wilson talk about? The white heat of technology. He'd be turning in his grave when OpenAI and ChatGPT is changing the world.
Yeah, but I do have to tell you that was Dennis Healy, not Harold Wilson, who used that phrase.
Are you sure?
Yep, you check it out.
We'll have to ask ChatGPT. In all seriousness, Keith, whether it's this week or last week or next week, something's changed. Are we in a post-COVID tech world now? COVID first inflated the value of tech companies ridiculously, then deflated them. We got back to normal because everyone got stuck in their homes for 2 years and then were let out again. Is this ChatGPT a new chapter in the history, in the 21st century history of technology in Silicon Valley?
I think it's part of it's very coherent to what happened during COVID. If you look at how Pfizer and Moderna and others discovered drugs, they used AI to do iterative learning against large data sets to figure out, in a simulation initially, what could kill the COVID virus. And I think ChatGPT is just another field of AI. And what it tells us, the era we're moving into, is it's a post-intuition era. It's an era where data...
Oh, I like that. Post-intuition. I might use that as the headline.
Post-intuition. It's where data and the ability for computers to work on that data can lead to outcomes that would have been previously impossible.
So, Keith, for novelists, artists of one kind or another, what happens to intuition in your post-intuition era?
Intuition, I'm using it in the pejorative sense of making decisions based on guesswork, and it's more in the realm of science. I think intuition in the creative field is always going to be more interesting than that.
Do you think it's going to have any impact on politics? I mean, if anything, in America, while everything may be steaming ahead on the tech front, politics seems mired in nonsense of one kind or another. This was the week of Biden's State of the Union when he didn't say very much. Is politics going to be able to use this ChatGPT to reinvent itself, or is it just going to lag behind? One of your other news stories this week is of your old friend Lena Khan at the FCC chalking up another defeat. She seems years behind the action these days. Is government going to be able to cope with this?
I think government's going to be held more and more accountable. Things like fact-checking are going to become super easy to do. And so, politicians... But
whose facts? I mean, is it going to be Trump's facts or Joe Biden's facts or Bernie Sanders' facts, Fox News's facts or CNN facts, or that was the weak facts?
Well, Andrew, the interesting thing is there is such a thing as just a fact. Like we said, you can't have your own facts. So I think a computer is really good at just saying that is not a fact. So Donald Trump's, in quotes, facts would be revealed as not facts very, very quickly, as already happened on Twitter with, an army of fact checkers checking everything he said, already exposed him. But a computer could do it in real time. So
Gary Marcus, who you're debating on Monday, has his own new startup focusing on the use of AI. I'm not sure if it's ChatGPT, generative AI, to address this issue. Keith, is there any other news this week? I mean, we talked a little bit about Lena Khan. Some of the big tech companies are reeling. I mean, it's a great week for Microsoft. Amazon hasn't responded. Google stock dropped 8% after their own generative AI demo was shown to not work very well. How is tech broadly dealing with this? Are there winners and losers?
there are definitely winners and losers. I mean, this week Google was a huge loser because their chat bot that competes with ChatGPT in the promotional video accompanying their launch of it made a simple error in facts, and that was revealed and exposed and became the main story. Now, weirdly enough, ChatGPT makes similar mistakes, but doesn't get as hammered because it's a private company.
Google. Right. So for people who own Google stock, it was a bad week. I own some Google stock. I would get my wife to sue Google. The only problem is she works for them. And she's a lawyer. So I don't think that would work very well. But there are going to be ups and downs on this. I mean, it's always snakes and ladders. You also predicted in the past on this show that you think that Microsoft will fail in integrating this new technology, which they're behind. They've put $10 billion into it, into being their search engine, which has proved to be a failure. This week, they came out with their intentions. Is that clearly going to end in disaster for Microsoft, Keith?
Well, I don't think it'll end in disaster. I think it'll be pretty neutral. Microsoft is very far away in third place amongst search engines. And if this is an attempt to get them back into first place, which their CEO Satya Nadella did say was the goal this week, I think it'll fail, and it'll fail because of their fear of removing Bing as we know it and replacing it with this conversational interface. They're not going to go the whole way, and they've actually buried chat beneath a click, and they've retained the old Bing interface as being the primary interface, and it isn't very good. I think that they're going to be the victim of their own conservatism.
And it's interesting that Sam Altman, whatever you think about him, he's anything but conservative. I wonder if he's scratching his head or tearing his hair out, getting into bed with such a conservative company. But
honestly, I doubt he cares what Microsoft does, because
they own 50% of the company, don't they?
Not really. No, they own a bunch of the revenue, but they don't own 50% of the company. And what they do with his product doesn't really matter, because they're paying him a lot of money. And meanwhile, he's going to develop his own path with ChatGPT that doesn't depend on them. And that's the advice I'd give him. I was dependent on Microsoft.
One of your companies hit the Microsoft wall. One thing I would predict almost inevitably is Sam Altman will experience the Elon Musk effect at some point, but that's in the future. There was also one piece that just came out, Keith, on the BBC, which I think may have missed the newsletter this week, a quantum breakthrough. We've heard about this before. If indeed there is this quantum breakthrough, which will revolutionize computing, what would that mean to the ChatGPTs of the world, to generative AI? Would it make it suddenly archaic?
No, the opposite. Quantum computing is essentially computing that can do more things more rapidly. So if you think of computing as really math problems, a quantum computer can solve a math problem faster and easier and way more complex problems. So things like natural language interfaces and parsing lots and lots of data and making sure you get it right when you answer a question become easier if computing power escalates. And that's what quantum computing is. I will say it's far away from being usable yet. Quantum computing is not binary. It goes way beyond binary. So the computer languages and the ability to do queries are super hard. And therefore, it can only do a limited set of things. Like you can give it an encryption algorithm to break.
And if there is a cure for cancer, it will come not from ChatGPT, but from quantum computing.
Yeah.
Well, that's all in the future. We will deal with that in future shows. Your startup of the week, Keith, though, goes back. It's all about failure. Mastodon. What's so interesting about Mastodon? Why'd you choose them as your startup of the week? They're there. If anything, they should be your finish up of the week.
Yeah, they're in startup of the week. This is British irony to viewers who live in cultures where irony is not a thing.
I didn't know you had irony in Yorkshire, Keith.
We do have irony in Yorkshire and steel as well.
But, you mine irony, right? Your father was an irony miner.
He was. So basically, Mastodon is the supposed replacement to Twitter. And everyone who hates Elon Musk has flocked to Mastodon as a replacement.
Or had flocked. They're not anymore flocking.
And now it's a sad, shrinking group of people. And Twitter, despite its challenges, which are many, seems to be surviving just fine. So I think making Mastodon startup of the week was my way of shining a light on their failure.
Well, things change. 6 days is a long time in tech and in politics and in startup land. Mastodon, which was everyone's favorite a few weeks ago, now is dead. Finally, speaking of Twitter, they're always going to be our startup of the week. Tweet of the week, Keith, to end our show.
Tweet of the week, super important, although a bit obscure. Because of the correction in the public markets, venture capitalists have stopped writing checks, and companies are being encouraged by their investors to take debt along with equity sales to fund their operations. And this is a guy, Samir Kaji, who runs Allocate, who used to be the guy at Silicon Valley Bank who gave debt to companies, strongly advised them not to take it. And he explains, if you click through on this, why not to take it.
It's a very important message. You got burned by it. I got close to being burned by it. But what's the alternative? If your company's going bust or your company's running out of money, out of runway, you can't pay your staff, and the VCs have closed their wallets, then what's the choice? What else could you do except take debt?
I think you can try to get revenue, or you
could steal, I guess.
Or you can sell equity. Debt is basically something you have to pay back in a fixed period of time. And if your company can't generate the revenues to do that, they will force you to close the company down. So
some things never change. I just did a show on Calvin Coolidge, the American president, who didn't like debt. Debt is as bad now in 2023 as it was in 1923, Keith, at least according to Silicon insiders like yourself.
No, debt is how the human race is enslaved through debt. Think about what a mortgage is. It's a lifetime debt. And there's no preconceived reason why home ownership should take the form of debt, but it does. Same with car buying. Usually a car is a 5-year, 6-year debt for poorer people, especially. So debt is it's an inhuman enslavement. People with money enslaving those without it, and seeking interest on the debt, as well as getting their money back. It's not a good human instrument. So Samir's right when it comes to startups, but I think more broadly, fintech innovation would do well to find ways of funding things that don't involve debt. And there are many possible answers to that.